Hey guys, welcome to the first installment of a new series on this channel dedicated to the ins and outs of vocal technique. For those of you wondering, who is this lady and why is she trying to talk to me about vocal technique? Good question. My name is Armenia, welcome to my channel, and here's a little bit about my background. I've been training classically for over a decade, and before that had quite a bit of experience in jazz and musical theater, had a little bit of a stint in symphonic metal back in 2015, Nightwish Forever. And I have a home studio where I write and record vocal parts for various media projects, and I perform classical and/or Armenian folk music in the city and abroad. But let's jump into the meat and potatoes of this video now that that is out of the way and I've got your stamp of approval. Let me know. I took to Instagram and asked you guys, what do you want to know about vocal technique? I mean, we're quarantined, we might as well come out of all of this with a new skill. And you guys had so many wonderful and relevant questions that I thought, you know what? I should do a long video format really answering these thoroughly instead of just trying to do tidbits on my stories, because let's be real, who's gonna learn how to sing in an Instagram story? So because of that, here we are with a new series on this channel. You'll probably notice the difficulty-o-meter might be a bit random in this video, and that's only because I really wanted to make sure I answered all your questions, regardless if it was posed by somebody who is a new singer with limited technique, or an intermediate singer, or an advanced vocalist. So future episodes will probably be categorized more between difficulty levels, but for now let's just get to your questions, of which there were many, and that's super exciting. But because of that, I split the video up into two parts, and if your question wasn't answered in this video, it absolutely will be answered in the next. But make sure you watch this one first so you understand some of the key basic concepts that will aid those as well. For that reason, make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell for this channel, because that way you won't miss the notification for the next video and all the other videos to come, because we're gonna make some exciting content together. All right, let's jump in. So the first question is, are there techniques that help to achieve runs? Runs are a quick sequence of notes over a vowel, and the reason I wanted to start here is because the answer to this is also the answer on how to learn new difficult music. First things first, the body has to get really familiar with each and every note, and that means slow, repetitive practice while isolating small sections at a time. Practicing a long run in its entirety at full speed is never going to get you where you want to be, because the body simply hasn't had a chance to get familiar with the intricacies and details of the phrase. So by practicing that way, all you're going to do is reinforce the wrong habits over and over again, regardless of how many times you practice it. The best thing to do is to break it up into little chunks. Take it at a tempo where you can feel that every note is being fed from below, and practice it over and over and over until you're so bored of it because your body knows it so well. Once you've done that, move on to the next chunk, and the next, and the next, and then put the phrase together as a whole, again at a slower tempo. Make sure you've got all the consistency of air, and then once that feels good, you can take it a tempo. Luckily, all runs are done on vowels, because most composers consider the singer's comfort and don't want to kill you. Most. Just joking, it just works and sounds a lot better when a run is melismatic, so that's why. Because of that, you can definitely practice the run on the intended vowel of the word, but I find that using smaller vowels like E and U give more of a chance for accuracy when you're learning a new run. My amazing teacher often uses a garden hose analogy. So if you consider a garden hose, the smaller the opening, the farther and more accurate the direction of the water becomes. A wider spray doesn't go very far and often spills in a messy, haphazard fashion. Some people find it really helpful to use consonants in order to propel the vowel when they're learning a run or a quick passage. So b b b b b b b b b, and you want to burst inwards. B b b b b b b b b, do 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 do, va 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 va. You want to use percussive sounds and propel this way, not this way. After you've learned the phrase and got a handle on all the notes, now it's time to sing the darn thing. But your job is no longer a detailed one. It's super important to not be over-involved in the process of the run. It's called a run for a reason. You're not holding its hand and walking with it, making sure that every single note is in its little home. It's running away from you and your overthinking. Once it's in your system, let it run. Don't get in the way. This was my biggest issue, but as soon as I trusted that the body knows what it's doing, it's learned it, and I let it do its job, it was so much easier and it produced a much more full, colorful sound. Try not to focus on every note as it's passing, but rather consider the phrase to be one long note that you're sustaining. Your job is to set up a proper breath, keep the release of the air pressure consistent, and then let the body take over. You've done the work, just gotta feel the joy of the run now. Okay, so we're going to be doing a little bit of debunking for this next question. Someone said that they're often told to open their mouth in order to propel sound, but that it's not really working. Correct. And I just wanted to give this person a hug when I read that, because I'm sure it's so frustrating when you're told to do something that has nothing to do with the mechanics of actual sound production. So let's get into debunking this right now. This is a question of lack of resonance and not a wider opening. If you're unhinging your jaw and singing forward without creating any resonant space inside, all you're doing is spilling out your air and creating tension. Tension is no good for singing. The body seeks pleasure, and as soon as something doesn't feel right, it's gonna let you know, and you should stop doing it immediately, because we don't want to create tension when we sing. Sound that carries well comes from utilizing small, vibrant, resonant spaces, not from pushing sound forward or forcing your mouth open. So let's talk about spaces, more specifically, cavities. Not these kinds. There are 3 cavities that make up the vocal tract: the pharynx, the oral cavity, and the nasal cavity. So what is a cavity? It's a hollowed out vacant space within an object. And what do vacant spaces do? They echo and create resonance. So think of when you go into a tall open church, or a hole in a mountain, or a well that when you sing into creates resonance. A lot of singers think that the oral cavity, or the mouth, is the sole or primary resonator, and it is in fact an echo chamber, but a much more powerful one that creates the most amount of color, resonance, and overtones is actually the pharynx. By the way, that combination, resonance, color, and overtones, is what allows for an opera singer to be heard over an orchestra without a microphone. Manuel Garcia said, "The real mouth of the singer ought to be considered the pharynx, because it is the pharynx that causes timbres. The facial mouth is but a door through which the voice passes." So because of this, we know that swinging your mouth open doesn't actually aid in sound production or resonance. You're just spilling out whatever air you did manage to get in your oral cavity. Now, you're probably wondering, Armenia, how am I supposed to feel for and use these resonant cavities that you're speaking so highly about? I'll have to dedicate another whole video to really describing and working with those resonant cavities, as well as introducing the hard and soft palates, which are very important, and of course the very useful yet also large and sometimes intrusive muscle known as the tongue. But this is what I will leave you with for now. Try your best to never aim the sound forward or sing out of your face. Try not to manipulate the sound based off of what you're hearing. Feeling is key to healthy singing. Feel for proper vibration, resonance, origin of sound, space, air pressure. Feel for production, and don't listen for results, because if you're listening, you're not actively singing, and singing requires a lot of active work. Yawning is a fantastic way of familiarizing yourself with those open spaces. When you yawn, yes, your mouth opens, but as a result of maximizing your airways. So you don't yawn if you just go, right, dropping your jaw out forward and unhinging. But your mouth will open and your tongue will lethargically kind of cascade over the top of your teeth when you start opening up your airways in the back. So I'm expanding my pharynx, I'm utilizing my oral cavity and creating space there. So try this with me. I want you to make yourself yawn and notice how open your cavities are. Here we go. And let it be a full yawn. Don't try to cover your mouth politely, which I did for the longest time until I realized that that's not helpful. We're just trying to open up our cavities. Have a proper yawn, that's okay. Notice how open your cavities are. Here we go. Those open spaces are where the air needs to travel to and aim to and circulate within to create resonance and travel well. Not out of your mouth in a forward direction, but back towards those open and ready cavities. Okay, we have reached vibrato. I've been asked about this a bunch of times, and the question is, how do we achieve vibrato? This is a tricky one because first we have to really understand what vibrato is and why it happens. The simple answer to that question is healthy vocal habits naturally produce vibrato. You don't. But let's dive a little bit deeper. Vibrato comes from the Italian word vibrare, meaning to vibrate. And it's essentially a quick and slight alternation between two pitches, creating a warm vocal tone. It can vary in intensity and has a rich emotional quality, which is why it's so heavily seeked. However, we really have to understand the mechanics of it first. So let's turn to the larynx and the vocal folds, commonly referred to as the vocal cords. So if we were to put a camera straight down your throat, what you would see is this. These are your vocal cords. So you're looking at it like this, as if it was looking down on it, okay? So when we take a breath in, the folds open in order to create an airway. When we speak or sing, they close, and the air trying to pass through makes them vibrate. Underneath your vocal cords is your trachea, your windpipe, and as the air comes up the trachea and hits the larynx, which is also referred to as the voice box, and it houses the vocal folds, when the air passes through the vocal cords from the trachea, that is the point of transformation. So it goes from breath into sound in the larynx. That's why it's called the voice box, because that's the point of transformation into sound. From there, it goes into the pharynx, which is our resonator, our echo chamber. Hey bud, nice to have you back. We missed you. Most voice scientists agree that vibrato enters the vocal production as a relaxant because the body has a need for periodic muscle relaxation during intense activity, like when you're sustaining a high pitch. So think of how if you're holding a heavy object for a prolonged period, your arm would kind of begin to shake. So that shaking protects the muscle during heavy pressure. So vibrato protects the vocal folds, that muscle, from the intense pressure of the air. A poor understanding of what vibrato is often leads many singers to force produce unhealthy imitations of it. An overly produced or wobbly sounding vibrato doesn't always sound the best, and it's also an indicator of unhealthy technique. It is a common misconception that vibrato needs to be added to the voice. Vibrato merely exists when all the right things occur and is a natural element of healthy vocal timbre. When good resonance, proper breathing mechanics, tone production, and relaxation are present, the vibrato will simply come on its own. It's something our bodies do, not something that we force upon the voice. In order to develop good vibrato, develop solid, healthy technique. No trick, no shortcuts, no pulsating the abdominals in and out and tossing the diaphragm to and fro. It'll occur when good healthy singing is in place. And I know that's not what everyone wants to hear, and trust me, I've been there, but there's no shortcut to healthy singing. Yeah, you can fake the sound, but it's easy to detect, and there's also a health cost to everything. Okay, and one of the most important parts of the air production process, the diaphragm. I'm going to explain what the diaphragm is, how it functions, but here's the key thing. When the diaphragm is engaged, it keeps the lungs open and moderates the rate, the speed at which the air is released from the body. If you're not engaging your diaphragm, you have very little control over the air, and it's really hard to sing. So some people were asking me, how do I get through a phrase in one breath? By getting to know the diaphragm. Now, the challenge with the diaphragm is that we can't technically feel it, we feel the effects of it. So it's really hard to learn how to engage a muscle you can't see or technically feel, but it's nowhere near impossible. So diaphragmatic breathing, or deep breathing, is breathing that is done by contracting the diaphragm, which is a dome-shaped muscle, and it's attached to the bottom of the ribs. And it's kind of like an elevator shaft in the middle of your body. And when it contracts, it can spread the rib cage open during inhalation and then brings it back together for exhalation. And essentially what that does is expand the rib cage in order for the lungs to have more space to fill. The diaphragm is located horizontally between the thoracic cavity, which houses the lungs and heart, and the abdominal cavity, which is the cavity that houses the other trunk organs. And then in order for all of this to function comfortably, we need to tuck in our lower abdominals for support. So that's diaphragmatic breathing with your rib cage. Belly breathing, on the other hand, or like the yoga breath, stills the upper torso and expands the belly because the diaphragm is contracting to elongate the lungs, and it kind of shoves all the other organs out of the way, and that creates a protrusion in the belly. So that's what that is. It's an easier breath to learn, and it feels more natural, which is why it's more common, and it's definitely an excellent way to introduce breath awareness and calm people immediately. But the diaphragmatic ribcage breathing is more suitable as a singer's breath because it is way more powerful in strengthening the diaphragm, in deepening inhalation, and stretching the lungs. I'd be really happy to do a full video on breathing, on different exercises, the different kinds of breath, using all of the functions properly. So let me know in the comments below if that's something you guys want. Leave a like so I know that you guys are liking this information and I should follow along with some other content. Okay, we have reached the end of this video. That was a lot of fun. I have a few final thoughts. Good singing is super simple. It's utilizing our naturally resonant spaces and maintaining good consistent air pressure. It just takes a long time to achieve and unlock and to kind of work through all the problems that arise along the way of trying to figure out these mechanics. But it's really just a couple things. Forget when all those people say, oh, don't have milk before you sing, or don't eat, or this or that. Singing is air and singing is resonance. You can have a whole pizza if you wanted to. You're not gonna feel great, but you can definitely still sing. And of course, artistry and intention and emotion, all of those things are a totally different conversation from mechanics. But for now, I think it's really good just to understand how things are working in your body, and then we can start having the conversation of letting emotion and artistry actually aid the technique, because they're not separate. But again, we'll get there all in good time. Make sure you're liking and subscribing and leaving me comments so I know what kind of stuff you guys are looking for, what kind of questions you want me to answer. And also, by liking and leaving comments and subscribing, I know that you guys actually like this content and I should keep making more, so definitely let me know. Thank you so much for sending me these questions and interacting with me on social. It's a lot of fun to talk about this stuff. I'm really passionate about it. It's something that this is what I'm good at. Everyone, I think, always gets happy when they get to share information about the stuff that they love and stuff that they're good at. So thanks for listening. I hope it was helpful, and lots of love. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you guys really soon. Stay tuned for part 2 of this video. Have a good one. Bye.